Well, Sorakamol, thanks so much for joining us today for our Creative Industry Season live discussions. We really appreciate your time and joining us.
Thank you so much, Shani.
Yeah, absolutely. And am I pronouncing your name correctly? Because I should have asked you that before we started. Okay.
Sorakamon, yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Um, well, we've been having these conversations with creatives in the community and folks who represent different organizations just throughout the state under our season this year, just to kind of get a feel for what folks have done in their own communities around collaboration and really in the spirit of kind of trying to get to know who the creative businesses are and the creatives in our state, and just to kind of talk about what it means for us to come together as we continue to grow and develop the creative ecosystem. And a lot of what Arlen and I have seen in the field is that there's so many amazing creatives that have incredible talent and incredible projects and ideas that they're trying to bring forth. And sometimes we do it in silos and we operate independently. And we have found that there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. So, us starting and having these conversations has kind of been just one of the ways that we're trying to get folks to connect and talk to each other and just think differently about what collaboration can mean for our creative economy. So, that's kind of what we're going to get into today. And we appreciate any kind of insight and perspectives that you'll have to share with us.
Awesome.
Yeah. So could you tell us maybe a little bit about your creative journey and what inspired you to kind of start working with Creative Santa Fe? Because I don't think you started the organization, right? But you came into it a little while ago. We'd love to get some history on that.
Yeah, so my background is actually I have to start the in Thailand. So I actually was born and raised in Thailand before I came to United States. And in our culture, the arts weren't separated from our everyday life. It was integrated into our cultural identity. And so it's very interesting coming to America where it is a separate thing. It's like something you have to fight for. Whereas in the way I was raised, it was totally integrated into our upbringing and how we express ourselves and what it means to be Thai, we utilize all the arts. And it's like we were trained from handicraft to performance arts, both like vocal, dance, instrumental, and it could be because of my own particular education. But in the Thai communities, everything is touched with a lot of care. So creativity and the arts is not at all. It's kind of odd to come to America and then it's like you have to have an elective. You have to go an elective to go do something creative. Um, One of the things that I did see when I came to, actually landed in Las Cruces when I came to United States and got really lucky into being included in this class for creatively gifted kids in high school. And it was a multi-grade class, and it was a run by a teacher who's still around. She's no longer teaching. Her name is Rosemary Kirby.
Yeah.
Um, Rosemary was phenomenal in her vision about what it means to have creative students, that the network of that, having other fellow creatives, how much it really support the students' journey into their own becoming. And I have watched students who, in this environment where she allows them to be, and the projects were framed very open-ended. She gave them a lot of avenue to, deliver the learning. Um, I have seen students who had stuttering problems, was able to compete at storytelling and won first place at state, right? I mean, it's just by providing that space for people and the connectivity, it really does change. Um, so I lived it myself, like growing up. So it's very natural. And it's funny because you're saying, your project here is to help really bring up like the importance of collaboration. So I have four kids. I don't know if we talked about that or not. I have four kiddos. And because of my own education and my own background, when we have our first house, we actually designated a room called Creativity Room.
Oh, how cool.
We built workbenches and so that it's at their height. We made little storage bins so that it's always ready for something. You know, there's instruments in there, there's creativity material in there, and it's like really meant for them to really engage with their own like whatever they wanted to do, right? And my oldest one is the visual artists that very much, you know, like all of them do that, but he's really pursuing that as his future work.
Mhm.
He turned to me at one point along the way because would just draw constantly, and we would have iPads. We buy technology, we buy tools for them to express themselves, and he just said, you know, I noticed that you never create anything your own like like private creative projects because he was
Mm.
on his own, and I thought about it, and I was like, oh, I actually don't feel any compulsion to create anything unless it's in a collaboration and for something.
Oh,
So it was really interesting. Like I noticed that I was able, like the whole Pecha Kucha, which is something I wanted to share with this community about this storytelling platform that I have now been the organizing team, part of the organizing team since 2019. Um, this whole project started because one of the other original organizer came and said, "Hey, would you like to help us launch this for our city?" And she knew that my background is in brand design, brand strategy, brand communication, and it's really, you know, the emphasis of my training was in the visual communication. And I said, I would love to help you because I was looking to collaborate with her specifically. I know nothing about Pechakucha, but it's like in the desire of being in collaboration, it
yeah.
inspired me to produce the work, right? And I end up doing these little poster designed for the events. That's how my journey started. And now, you know, like how it grew into what it is today is just phenomenal. Uh, but it's really that's you know I think about creativity and collaboration for me it's connected, right? And that's why my when I came you know in to revive Creative Santa Fe in 2021, I was already doing brand strategy as a practice, and I saw that the process was really beneficial for the clients. And not only it gave clarity, but it also ensured that the design development that we create aligns with the strategy and their goals.
Mm.
I saw the result of that that was beyond transaction. It was like the quality of the human beings inside who
Mhm.
own the brand, who own the story. They just feel more centered. They just felt like they know what's true now. And it gave me a sense, expanded my sense about what design means, right? It's about, you know, before it was very aesthetic trained, and it shifted for me that design actually begin with intention. It's like
Mhm.
the purpose of where do you want to go, and then creating the condition to help you get there. And I wanted to bring that level of care and service to support other nonprofits and agencies and collective community initiatives and elevate and amplify the work and to really create progress on it, right? Because I think a lot of times what happens is that, especially in the modern times, we're so bombarded with so much information, needing something from us, distracting us, that unless you're able to like elevate your need of your story that needs to be important to a level where there is desire to look at it, desire to understand it, you
Mhm.
can't get the buy-in. And
Yeah.
when we're trying to create real big community change, you need a lot of people to come along with you, right? So like there's a part of the engagement strategy is that investment of how do we tell this story, you know, like not only how does it sound, how does, you know, the words we say, how does it look, in what way are we interacting with them, how are we bringing the key stakeholder even to agree on what that story is, like so it's really a desire of mine to come to Creative Santa Fe and add that and built on this convening platform, right? That's what Creative Santa Fe has been doing, looking at critical issue through a creative lens. And when I came on, it was very important to me that we move the organization more and more into not only are we creating space to convene and consider this, but we look for opportunity to really understand and invest with partners on the ground to really see what are the needs, right, that they have, who's ready for the support, and making sure that that work is always in partnership with other organizations that are have been dedicated to doing that, creating that change.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And there's such a big piece of storytelling for the creative economy that like we've run into just when you're trying to educate folks who might have not been in space for the creative economy. And it's so right that outside of the United States, there's not a separation between culture and creativity and then what we're doing and like growing our economy and growing our communities. And when helping creatives to tell that story and empowering like creative businesses to also be able to engage in that practice is so important, because even when it comes to helping legislators and those in the traditional business environment understand what the creative economy has to offer, a lot of times our creatives aren't ready to have those conversations because we're so used to being able to share that space with people who just get it at that level, whatever that might be. And I think that the work that you all are doing through Creative Santa Fe, especially with the Pecha Kucha Nights, is a really powerful practice for that. But my next question for you would be how New Mexico's creative landscape has kind of influenced the work that you've been doing with Creative Santa Fe and your approach to collaboration when you're kind of creating programming.
Yeah, so and I just want to utilize this one specific initiative, which is the storytelling platform. Like, let me just give a little premise so folks are all caught up on it. So, Pecha Kucha nights are hosted by over 1,300 cities around the globe. It's similar to TED Talk in that there's a global network, and there is a story exchange on the internet where every city is uploading and exchanging these stories from their own cities. And it's really intended to be a celebration of creativity and share humanity through these stories that we share. And it was super excited for us, when I joined the original team before I became like everybody had something. Somebody moved away, somebody got a baby. So like they suddenly it was like mine. I was like, oh no. And I loved it so much because it was really celebrating the people in our community, our local creatives, our local change makers. And, the format is a visual storytelling format, and it's 6 minutes and 40 seconds. It's structured around 20 slides that self-advance. So once you get up there, you don't control when it goes. It's a very equitable storytelling space. 6 minutes and 40 seconds, you've got to land your story. And so for me, like the more I do this, I get to meet other creatives. I get to meet other folks. But I would say that one of the things that's really important is that I didn't want creativity to be only owned by the arts and the culture, right? That's not how that's not what's happening in our humanity. Is creativity lives in every space. I have entrepreneurs who come in and talk about, how they're creatively solving some really hard issues in
Mhm.
the environment and what they're doing about it, right? I have had uh, um, community leaders that are changing the way we see each other through creativity and how they're going about that. So when I think about how does it affect my work, it's like I literally feel like Creative Santa Fe, is dedicated to elevating our local creatives and change makers because their story inspires other people to show up, and to like lean in, like instead of and it's by design, like so 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And we tell people this too. Some people come in and they really want to tell their story. And I said, and they're like, pitching. And I said, hey, I see you have really great work, but I see that you're trying to like point to some issue in our community here. This story format, because of the way it's designed, it's not a soapbox. It's not going to be sufficient space for you to really justify why you have disgruntled, whatever the injustice is. I'm not undermining the truth of that injustice, but this is a space in which it's by design. It's like if you want the audience to really be transformed by that space that you get to have with the audience, it has to really show how are you creatively solving that challenge that you just point out.
Mm.
And we had a beautiful designer who had worked for Mia Wolf as part of the team. And when, we met, and his project, he's a Nigerian American, and he has his presentation was called How to Loot a Museum. So he developed a way to um, using iPads and iPhones to be able to go into museums and essentially 3D scanned artifacts.
Oh, wow.
And and then he posted it that it's also then free for any other people to download and do whatever they want with it.
Wow.
They can create art with it. Because without that, you would have to pay a, a fee to the museum for the usage of image, and all of that. And he
Right.
and I didn't really understand the Nigerian history. And he explained to me during the process that we were sitting together to shape his Pechakucha story, that essentially the British came and they essentially wipe out the existing culture, stole
Mhm.
everything, and redistribute all of these across different museums, right? And he showed me one of the artifacts, and they're cast in bronze. These 3D, they're like pictorial. And he said, I want to tell you that these are actually life book. They tell our history, but
Mhm.
because now it's being distributed like this across the globe, it's like somebody just tore all the pages out of the book and like spread them everywhere. And it's just like heartbreaking. But the way
Wow.
he did it wasn't like, the British were bad. He was just
Mhm.
like, this is how I'm this is my way, right? Of being able
Right.
to challenge the existing system.
Right.
So when I think about like, like I'm constantly inspired by who comes and seeing what they're doing and how they're addressing, elevating, and addressing in their own way.
Yeah, and we get to learn when we hear each other's stories and just have new perspective. So absolutely, that just must be a really incredible space to be able to work in, to be able to hear those stories and then also help them distill it down to something that's like, all right, you only get people's attention for this long, so we're going to help you make this the most impactful that it can be. I think that's really great. Well, Sorakamol, would you have any advice for creatives who want to collaborate but don't know where to start? Sometimes there's a lot of fear in sharing ideas and sharing stories and taking that next step to make our ideas real, and it's easier to kind of keep them to ourselves. But if folks were looking to collaborate, would you have any advice for them where to start?
Shani, given that you've been out in the field, can you share with me a little bit about what people have said to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most of the time what we're seeing is like we've spoken with a number of theater spaces and event kind of facilities that are having a hard time like keeping a brick and mortar space. And we haven't had conversations yet, but Arlen and I were chatting about what's the opportunity if they were to come together and have similar conversations about the challenges that they're facing and then try and find a way forward, whether that's something like co-renting a space that they might be able to split the calendar on and then kind of cut prices down for the overhead costs. Um, but I think that kind of comes out of the place where there's folks who have an idea, but they're not necessarily ready to talk to the people who are in the greater community or working for another organization because they don't know how it's going to be received, or if they're going to, be suggesting changes or telling them to just like, oh, that's not a great idea, right? And then how we have to then either internalize that stuff or not internalize it and continue to pursue our dreams and goals, and kind of what it means if we want to get a project off the ground, but we don't know where to go. And then we're also not willing to kind of take that risk. I mean, I think that sometimes folks are just worried about the leap of faith that it takes to pursue something. So they just stay frozen in that space instead. Um, and I think that's everybody, but I think for creatives and creative businesses specifically, especially when you have something that might be brand new or no one's ever done it before, or it's crossing two different ideas. And I usually use this example if there's a shop in Denver that is combined with like a thrift store, a bar, and a record store. So you can like participate in these several different activities at once. And I can't imagine knowing where to even start that process. Even though it's a fantastic idea, I think about applying that to New Mexico. And I think that, you know, if you talk to the wrong, if the wrong group, right? There's just folks who may have not thought of that as a concept before, right? And then they don't really know what to do with it when you're asking them for advice. But then there's also groups of people that if you ask for that, they'd be like, oh, that's awesome. And did you think of this and this? And you could do it this way. And they get really excited about it. And sometimes people, rather than even sharing that idea, you know, to friends and family, it just pops in and it stays. And what I guess that's kind of the question is if people don't know where to start or they haven't done that before, you know, to take that risk.
Thank you for reminding me how vulnerable our dreams are, right? Like, I mean, I think creativity is such a it's such a compelling force, and but it also requires a lot of courage to be able to own it and try it.
Hmm.
You know, so I want to answer in two different ways. First, I just want to acknowledge the tender space that is, to just the willingness to like come and meet something blank and like start something new, or like to have a dream to be like, I would love to do this, or we would love to do this for our community or for ourselves, or we see this in a way to enhance the quality of life, improve, you know, whatever it is that we're trying to launch. Like it starts with that like dream, and that's, I get it. I get like sometimes you want to protect it a little bit, like, you know, you like don't want to be overly influenced. um I do know that it's really important to find your people, and I think this is why, you know, the Pechakucha is really geared towards audience who are ready to connect in a more connective and supportive way, even as audience, right? And the way we framed it, every, you know, the way we frame the evening is that, you know, like we invite you not to be here to pick your favorite, but to hear the most beautiful things you needed to hear from every presenters for yourself. Like to like collect the treasures, right? To be that open. So I do think it is important to be able to have like high stake communities. Like they're not like you're not there in front of VCs. You're not there in front of banks right away. You got to find your safe community to be able to share, and that could just be one friend to start. And I think on the other side of that, I think it's also really important the level of courage that if you know it's right, other people don't actually owe you the support, even our loved ones, for you to go after your dream. If you
Right.
are so compelled that this is something like that, you have to find your peeps, right? And you have to find other ways to like stay, you know, rooted, and to not reach for approval if you know that this is the direction you want to go. The other side of that, though, I want to say that one of the things I've seen work really well is, you know, like in the scenario where you're talking about, hey, there's two theater companies, they're struggling to be able to keep their brick and mortar on the rent. um, is there a possibility for them to collaborate in a sense that, you know, do a co-share co-share working space of a theater, right?
Hmm. Right.
um, One of the things that we have found work really well is to find the partner that has the need that you fit in. So, you know, for example, like, you know, when we partner with Site Santa Fe to co-present Pechakucha Night for our community, they did not have the capacity to help with programming, but they did have the capacity to provide venue and the staffing for to doing the tech, right? So that was really a nice a nice collaboration. It was the right fit. It aligns with, they wanted to also make sure that the community understand that they are here as a community resource, not just for the elite talking about contemporary art, but they're here to be a community resource. And in this expression of this share initiative, that value is expressed for them. So it was the perfect collaborative match. We
Mhm.
also partner with our UNM Anderson folks who has set up a Center for Responsible Entrepreneurship here in Santa Fe, to offer free accelerator 10-month-long program for entrepreneurs who are interested in learning not only about entrepreneurship, but how to practice, doing business that is socially minded and environmentally conscious, right? So again, that was a great partnership as well because they bring the subject matter expert, they bring the knowledge, and we brought in the ability to elevate them through, we help support the experience design. We do all of their communications for that. We leverage our brand platform as a local Creative Santa Fe platform to be able to welcome UNM in, and really help our community quickly adopt this offer that UNM has been investing in our community now for 3 years, right? So this is something that I would also recommend, like to actually like rather than just like pairing like with like, maybe you need to pair it with like, is there other opportunity to rent out your lobby to um, business networking event, whether you're charging venues fees, is there opportunity for, like thinking in that other type of collaborative space as well, like another type of partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really great. And I think just the example of you all at Creative Santa Fe partnering with Site Santa Fe and UNM Anderson really flows into this next question, which was kind of about building a stronger creative economy as New Mexico moves forward into the future and as things continue to change. We had a question around how creative businesses in New Mexico could work together to grow, just not on their own, but collectively as kind of a greater creative ecosystem. And I think just the picture you painted there is so beautiful because it takes we're not just a gallery, we're here as a community resource. And yes, we're UNM Anderson, but we're connecting into the creative community to talk about sustainability and stewardship and how we can connect our creativity into these things, while all three of the organizations continue to kind of like thrive and build that audience and build a new network base. And I don't know if there's anything else that you would add to that, but I think that you kind of answered it in saying like maybe don't look for the ones that are just like you, right? Like look for where those gaps are and where others might have different strengths that they can support you in. And I think that that's just a great example of the New Mexico creative economy in action. So thank you for sharing that.
And yeah, and I also really, it's so fundamental to really make sure that, and I know you all are already thinking that way, but part of the re-education for Creative Santa Fe when I came and revived this organization in 2021 was that it started, it lived as an arts and culture organization. And it was very important for me to keep re-educating people. I'm like, no, we are championing creativity and collaboration in every sector.
Mhm.
Not like the arts and culture, they have a lot of this, right? Like, how do we move this and make it part of the way we live and engage with each other as humans? And um, and I think that there's something, I don't know if you experienced this, Shawnee, if you've talked to folks in the field. Um, I recently met another entity in doing business accelerators that very focus on creative sector specifically. And she reminded me that sometimes artists or creatives, like they think doing business is like selling your soul to the devil. All right, and I was like, oh, right. Like I don't have that bias, right? I don't have that lens. I'm more interested in impact and outcome and reach. So I don't have this bias of like, I'm gonna get dirty if I touch money. I'm not gonna, like that is not at all my my lens. But I could see that if you come from this purist, like, if you do anything for money, then you've already lost. If you've
Mm,
already sold your creativity away. It's really, for me, it's a very sabotage thinking. Because then, like, what are you going to do, right? How do you actually going to thrive and continue doing that work if
right.
if you already begin to set it up so that this success is against your belief, right? So,
Right. Yeah, and that, I mean, the history of money and finances and just folks not even having, financial literacy education only became a requirement for like New Mexico public schools, I think, in the last 5 to 6 years. So definitely looking at that. And I think it's so much around boundaries as well, because there's a piece of entering into business with your creativity where you don't necessarily have to lose what makes your creative passion product or service. Like you don't have to lose that. You're allowed to say yes and no to what works for you, right? And we can learn to test those boundaries when we don't just write off, business and registering the business altogether, because that's some of the conversation we have is the creative economy is really difficult to measure because there's lots of hobbyists and creatives that don't report the income that they're making, right? It also doesn't fit easily into a NAICS code when you're trying to register a business. And why are they going to bother? They want to get back to doing what feels right for them, which is completely understandable. And then there's this other, whole structure of business and commerce and society that, it's here and you kind of got to pay to play. So figuring that out and not losing yourself in that process is such a big piece, but I think it's doable, but I definitely have seen both sides. I definitely have seen both sides. So I guess I've got a couple more for you, but what do you think is like one thing based on kind of the discourse that we had today and thinking about what collaboration can mean for New Mexico's creative economy, but maybe like one thing you would want folks to walk away with after today's brief conversation that we've had?
what one of the things that have been really amazing learning experience for me in this journey um, is that the best collaboration experience I have had is when people are both clear about what they can offer and also open to see where it goes. Um, so it's very odd to have a very productive conversation when everybody's just open, like we're just open in every possible way and let's just see where it goes. Because you can spend a lot of time just being not having direction, right? So like being at least having a define like, okay, where or what is it that we want to do and who can bring what to the table, right? And then say, okay, what other gaps do we need to bring more people to the table? Or can one of us, take on that need for right now? Um, and the other part, I think for us, just based on that experience of the successful collaboration, really came also with the trust of transparency that we care about each other. Yes, there's the project, there is financial constraints. Yes, all of those things are there. But the vision about what we want to create together is pretty clear, and we're sharing that vision. And then additionally, it's the relationship of the humans is probably the thing that actually ensure the success of that collaboration.
Mm,
The money, more than the vision in many ways, because sometimes vision has to change, or like as you learn, you gotta modify that. Um, but to be with a cohort of collaborators that has your back, right? That we can have honest conversation together, that we care about each other as human beings first and foremost. That baseline, like once it's there, then it's just a lot easier. Like you're looking out for each other. You're like, okay, you got the skill, we got access to funding, right? You got the idea, we got the space, right? So, but there is a lot of care, and I would say, like on a human level, like we go into it very respectful, and we also really fundamentally come together and have human conversations, and not to be right, but to find the right course, whatever it is.
yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Um, For Creative Santa Fe, is there any upcoming projects or opportunities or events that you'd like to share with us that can support local creatives or ways that they can get involved, maybe in the Pachacucha Nights?
Absolutely. So, these storytelling nights that we co-host at Site Santa Fe Auditorium is open to everybody in our community. And the next theme is actually on failure. It's going to be a very interesting night.
Wonderful.
And then the last one this year is it's on awe. So that's a very, and so I'm just like, oh, I'm wondering who's going to apply for that one. And it's really meant, again, this is an opportunity for us to elevate local creatives and change makers. And we have designed the process to scaffold every selected presenters towards being rock star by the time they get on stage. So, it's not a lonely journey. It's really a collaboration with our team. We're definitely coaching them, but also really hearing what is the essence of their story, because we only get 6 minutes and 40 seconds, right? Um, so it's on our website right now, on our landing page, creativesantafe.org. All of our upcoming Pachacucha nights, it's posted up there. The other thing that we also help boost is, again, the UNM Anderson Center for Responsible Entrepreneurship. Their accelerator program it's open to all types of creatives. And I'm sorry, all types of entrepreneurs, including creative entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
And that is, I think they're going to be doing a couple of sessions in June, and we're going to be, advertising the link to apply for the info sessions, or the first workshop that it's again free. I'm just like, please go, please utilize this resource. Our job is really to point. I'm like, we're not the one delivering the accelerator program, but we can certainly make sure that this offering doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah.
So those are the things. And to go back to Pachacucha Night, we're going to be publishing another 8 themes for the next 2 years later on this fall. So it's going to be up. People can apply. And we do the spot for each evening is around 8 to 10 people per night. And but you get 200 people live at the event, and you also get a digital product at the end. Your story goes up on this global exchange. I have had so many creatives that tell me that they use it in their promotion, right? They use it as their calling card, essentially, to talk about, because it's not a pitch, and it's actually more powerful than a pitch, because it's a story about passion and purpose of the work, which is
Yeah.
more attractive to other humans than trying to be feel like you're being sold something.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Sorakamol, thank you for your time so much. Happy Friday. Thanks for being with us. And once we get this wrapped up and delivered, we'll probably try and either tag you as a collaborator on the reel for Creative Santa Fe. And we look forward to continuing to connect with you and sending creatives towards the program so they can kind of maybe share their story on Pachacucha in the future. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.